1, 2, 3, 4.
In this podcast, you will hear Knights of Vader. Knights of Vader includes, but is not limited to, talk of Star Wars, not ray guns. We can't truly prepare you for the jump that follows this song, but hey, we gave it a try. So here's the Knights of Vader. Crystal Fox reports they are divided. Prequel, sequel, hate and love they fight. I know that we are just musicians hired, and their time is up, so here's the Knights of Vader.
Yes, I bet you have.
McClunky.
A big thank you to An Inspiriority Complex for providing our theme song. It is November 25th, 2019. My name is Zach Weber, and I am joined by professional podcast host Zenger.
This is the way.
And we have the titular Mando Rus.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Hello, howdy.
All right, Josh, no pressure. And last but not least, we have internet renaissance man Josh Cannon from Dancing with Ghosts and Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries. And most importantly, Knights of Vader's baby daddy. Josh, welcome.
I have spoken.
There you go. See,
That's for the end of the
There it
episode.
No, that's all I'm going to say for the rest of this podcast.
Oh, okay.
That's his version of I Am Groot.
Uh,
Is that a thing? Do we throw out Baby Groot now that we have Baby Yoda? Like, he's in the garbage now, in the dumpster.
Oh, he's next to the porgs and
every
the
time.
dreams of Ewoks to come. That's not happening. Did someone show, was it you, Zack, who showed that there is a porg on a Rise of Skywalker poster?
I reposted it in the group, in the Nice Vader Facebook group. But yes, apparently, I think it's the German poster. There are porgs, but somebody also pointed out that in that same image, the Falcon has the rectangular radar dish. So nobody knows exactly how accurate it's supposed to be.
Interesting.
The sneaky Germans again.
All right. Obviously, by the title of this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Mandalorian Episode 3. But before we get into that, I think Zenger has a couple of things he wants to get off his chest. One of them is the Kathleen Kennedy comment about there being no source material to adapt when it comes to Star Wars. But he also has something to say about Jedi Fallen Order.
I am weak. I'm a weak individual who is a weak person who was like, I'm not going to buy this till it's on sale. And then I'm standing there staring at it going, I'm buying you today. And then I brought it home. And Ellie actually has played it more than... Yeah. Yes. Ellie has actually played it more than I have.
Oh.
Which was fascinating because I was like, wow, she like blew through where I was. But she's also playing on I want to enjoy the story difficulty, where I'm playing I want to get my head smashed in difficulty. Because I will forewarn people, this game seems to be a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it so far. But I will say this. It is very much, I feel, it's not Dark Souls hard of like learning curve, but there is a learning curve on there. And if you're not good at the like reflexes in games where it's like you have to hit this button really quick if this is happening and then hit this button if this is happening, you're going to die a lot. And by comparison, Ellie said that when she was watching me play, the enemies do different moves and stuff. She's like, I've never seen them do that move before. And I'm like, I want to drop the difficulty, but at the same time, I feel like once I get further, I'm going to regret it in the sense of I'm going to be like, it's too easy now.
So this isn't like Force Unleashed levels of like easy, just you're immediately flipping people around and just destroying everything in your path.
No, like the most I can do with the Force right now is like force freeze somebody, and it's so like it basically I'm able to force freeze them to either jump away or make one quick attack, and that's it. Like I can't really do anything besides that. I also got a force lunge too, to where I'll lunge forward, but that's like it so far. It's there's a lot of stuff going on here though, so I'm excited. I just wanted to point out that I am weak, and I did buy it already, and I don't regret it. I just need to put my nose to the grindstone and play it some more. I will admit that Pokemon has taken up a lot of my time recently. So, yeah.
So Ellie still hasn't seen Avengers. Ellie still hasn't seen Avengers Endgame, though.
No, but she a quick announcement. Her return to the podcast is her days are numbered for being off the podcast. So look forward to her return. I'm trying to get her return to be her review of Endgame. So we'll see what happens.
It better be. You know what, Zenger? Just skip Endgame. Go straight to Far From Home.
I've tried doing that with her, and she's like, I don't have to see the other one. I'm like, no, and she just stares at me with like this. I know you're messing with me.
I look forward to that. But yes, Zenger is weak. I like how that episode went out last Thursday, and within like 4 hours of it debuting, Zenger's like, I'm weak, and he has a copy of him with the game. And it's like, damn you, Zenger. You couldn't even give it a few hours of the episode being out. Even 12.
No, they gave me a pop figure too. Like I bought it, and you got a free pop figure with it, so I got the second sister pop figure.
Oh, you mean that dumpster filler?
Yeah, that one.
You should actually swap it out for another pork figure.
They don't have any right now there. And it was only select ones.
Where'd you buy it? Best Buy or GameStop?
Target.
Oh, of course. I forgot. Zenger hops from these different retailers. He has his favorites depending on which way the wind blows.
Yes.
Yeah, and once that Baby Yoda hits the shelves, yeah, you're right. That is just some dumpster trash. They're like, you can get rid of this before we have to reduce it because we got to make at least half the store has to be for Baby Yoda.
Damn right. All right, but before we get into the Mandalorian episode 3, recently everybody's favorite Star Wars head of the company opened her mouth, and she made a comment that when it comes to Star Wars, that they have a harder time doing stories. Again, I'm paraphrasing here, folks. Forgive me. I'll link to the Rolling Stone article where Kathleen Kennedy was interviewed in the show notes. But in this interview, she says something on the lines of, they have a harder job than Marvel because they don't have a huge catalog to pull from when it comes to adapting stories and characters. And a nice portion of the Star Wars fan base had a freak out, which at this point comes about every, 20 minutes, depending on which way you look. And everyone's like, what do you mean? We have Legends. We have all those books. And even though I kind of get where both sides are going when it comes to this issue, I'm kind of bewildered by her comments, just her overall attitude to saying things like this. But before I get into my thoughts, I'm curious as to what Zenger and Russ's thoughts are, and Josh's, because I don't know how far Josh ever dabbled in the books and the other non-movie media.
I mean, I talked a lot about the game, so I will relinquish my time to somebody else to go first.
All right, Josh, did you ever, besides the movies, I know you played some of the video games, right? Back in the Nintendo 64 era?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I played, God, what was the one with Dash Rendar?
Yep.
Shadows of the Empire.
Shadows.
Yep. Yeah, that was the one I played.
And that was a comic, I think, too.
And a book.
And I collected a lot of the Shadows of the Empire action figures back in the day. I also... Well, I played all the other Star Wars games, too. Yeah, Star Wars games in general back in the day were, like, really high quality. Now, I don't know what the hell happened in the 2000s, but they're coming back, I hear. Because I heard that the newest one... Well, yeah. I don't even know what... and I'm going to sound like a okay boomer moment right now, but I don't even know what the Star Wars Battlefield or whatever was that just a multiplayer game? I remember getting the second one. I couldn't even figure out how to do like the campaign mode, and I don't know.
The first one
is a shoot 'em up. Yeah, it's pretty much a shoot 'em up with some heroes and Jedis and special things. Yeah, it's like a Call of Duty almost. I kind of like the mid 2000s ones better than these newer ones, but maybe it's just some getting older. But I always came from the perspective that I didn't really, as much as I loved all the games and everything, it never really considered it like canon, like it was essential to everything else. It was just like ancillary fun stuff to do. I never really attached it too much to the main story. So getting rid of the EU, I really didn't have too much of a problem with it because there was a lot of bad books out there.
My thing is we got nothing to pull from, or we've got nothing to really... It's like you have technically all of the EU that you could as easily as a just swipe of your hand or a signing of a piece of paper make canon again.
Well, she didn't want to insult she didn't want to insult thousands of writers and game designers and say we don't have any good games or books to pull from to make feature films out of. It's probably what her intention was. I mean, they definitely got rid of it for a reason.
And also, didn't they announce that Dr. Afra, whatever the one comic is possibly going to be being made into a series?
That's being hinted. That's a rumor. It's a
something
more
they're floating out there, I think.
Well, it's a rumor, but in the world of Star Wars, it's a more credible rumor compared to the trash that's on YouTube.
I'd agree with that.
But she's canon. See, all their new books and comics are their new canon. They just don't have a ton of it to pull from. I'm assuming is what she means. I mean, they've only been making new content for, 4 years now? Maybe almost 5?
Yeah, they started doing new content as early as, 2014.
But that's the other thing. There's so much stuff that they have in this limbo area where I guess they're trying to hold on to it for, could we use that in a movie or a a Disney Plus show? So used to saying Netflix.
It's all the same, Zenger. It's all the same. No, my thing with this is that I get both sides of the argument. I get what she's saying. She's making I think Russ kind of said it better than I could. Is that most of it is crap, but you can't say that. But at the same time, too, it's that considering that she's been head of this company now for over 5 years, she should really have a better grasp on everything about the company, even that was prior to her tenure as the head. And she should also learn how to not incite the fans. That's one thing, too, is that, okay, everybody compares her to Kevin Feige at Marvel, and I get why people hold him in high regard. He is the most successful producer in the history of cinema. But at the same time, though, that guy, again, cherry picks what he wants. It's again, he's done a great job, but folks, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's come on, you cannot look at that film and say this is a top tier level of entertainment. That film is just, it's there. It's the equivalent of a pound of overcooked rice. It's just there. Nobody likes that film in any sort of meaningful way. You enjoy it, but you do not love it. No, there's not a single person when you ask them what their favorite Marvel film says, Ant-Man and the Wasp, because it's not true. That person doesn't exist. Trust me.
Everyone likes everything from it, but no one really wants to linger on it. I remember it took me a long time to watch it. I looked at the Reddit thread, bring it back to a non-podcast conversation of just people's initial reactions to it and how hyped and was oh, this is gonna be a great character and all this, and then you don't hear a word about it ever since it came out.
Yeah, it's filler. It's filler. That's what it is. But going back to Kathleen Kennedy's comments. I think the worst part of her comment is I don't think she's being absent-minded when saying there's nothing to pull from. I think it's the idea that she should say that we do not Russ, she should have phrased it better. It should have been something more along the lines of we don't have as much content that is aware to general audiences. If for Marvel, they can pull from, I don't know, they can do Thor. It's much easier to convince people of Thor because he's a much more ubiquitous character in pop culture than, you guys were saying, Dash Rendar. It's much easier to convey Thor to the filthy casuals out there than it is Dash Rendar, because Dash Rendar is essentially Han Solo light. And that's a big problem, too, Star Wars has with the EU, is that a lot of the characters we all hold in high regard from the EU era are all just light versions of previous characters. You show a filthy casual Darth Revan, they're going to go, oh, what happened to Vader's mask? That's kind of what you're going to get. And that's why I think they're so hesitant to pull from the EU in any sort of meaningful way, outside of kind of winks and nudges, like Mandalorian's gun being the Boba Fett gun from the holiday special. They know the more obscure they get, it's going to disenfranchise people, whereas Marvel has now brought everybody on board to the point where they can do whatever they want, no one's going to question it.
And they do little things where they'll pull from something that isn't canon. Jyn Erso is pretty much the character Jan Ors, almost from all those old games, Jedi Outcast games and all that stuff. And she's the one who stole the Death Star plans in the old video games. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In Dark Forces, Jan Ors. But it's pretty much the same. I mean, they just took a character, flipped the name, made a different story.
And so my question is, where's Starkiller?
Ray is Starkiller, Zenger.
No.
Oh my God, you're not wrong.
Oh, Russ, how much I love that. That's just a fantastic impersonation.
Wait a second. So, what if Rey and Kylo Ren are both? Because Rey's like the limitless possibilities, and Kylo's like his anger.
The angsty teenager?
Yes.
I don't know. I'll let the creative people at Lucasfilm figure that one out. I just threw that out there. Hopefully, maybe someone will put the pieces together. Anything else about Kathleen Kennedy before we move into Mr. Mandalorian?
Just one more thing. I just like to imagine there's somebody that they paid to tell her, okay, here's how you need to say this. Don't say it this way. Please, you're going to anger people. And she goes, okay, walks on stage, and he's just slamming a clipboard into his head within 5 minutes.
Who's going to tell Kathleen Kennedy what to do? I mean, what? Iger? That's it?
No, it's one of those, like, they hire somebody to kind of, like, be like, hey, you're dealing with very touchy fans, so you might want to word it this way. They'll be more accepting of it. And she's like, okay, cool, and still just goes and does whatever she wants. And he's like, oh, man, I'm going to turn my notifications off on Twitter for a little bit and go somewhere else.
Okay, let's release this when the charts say the Star Wars fans are at their happiest, because maybe they'll just forget. Baby Yoda.
That's what they need to do. Just have a Baby Yoda plush they just throw out on the stage when stuff gets hot.
Oh, dear. All right, Mandalorian time. All right, last week we kind of talked about our overall thoughts of the show. But before we get into episode 3, Josh, I would imagine you've watched now all of what we've seen, all 3 episodes. So considering that you're the residential filthy casual we have when Rob's not around,
Yes.
what are your thoughts on The Mandalorian? I guess for reference, you weren't particular. So what's your opinion on the Disney era of Star Wars now relative to everything that came before it during Lucas's time?
Well, I share the filthy casual view that the sequels are better than the prequels. I definitely feel that way. Agree with that. I've seen obviously both movies in theaters, and I'll see episode 9 in theaters when that one comes out. I thought it was pretty good, but I'm also kind of one of those guys that feels like it could have stopped after the original trilogy and probably should have. And it's kind of like my golden era. I grew up watching the original 3 and I don't know. They just felt so contained in and of themselves that I just felt like adding on to it was only going to sully what they already had going. But The Mandalorian, I was actually very impressed, especially by the first episode. It had it kind of had this like dark edge that I've always wanted to see more of from Star Wars. I think I might even said that last podcast I was on, where it would be cool if they, like, so as a comparison, you had like the Batman movies in the 90s that were very cartoony, and then like by the time The Dark Knight came out, everyone was like, oh, this is how these movies are to be done, because it just had this darkness and this edge to it that I think people were really wanting to see. And I feel like when The Mandalorian, there's kind of more of a darker edge, both in the music. I noticed there's kind of some distorted guitar, ambient background elements. It's kind of shot. It's a dark series, like as far as, it's not like bright and cartoony like episode 1. There in one of the very first scenes, I guess they were trying to distinguish themselves, like, hey, we're not your grandfather's Disney Plus by showing the one guy getting bisected by the door.
Yeah, that took us also by surprise. I remember Zack, and we did some prediction show on. He's like, I think he drops him in the door and he interrogates him right there. And we're like, yeah, that probably makes sense. He would never. They're not going to kill a person. And then you watch the first, we're like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Nintendo porting, coming out with Resident Evil 4 as an exclusive. It was like, what? This kiddie console is coming out with this uber violent video game? It's like, it's companies like, I guess they like to do, I guess that's like a strategic move from time to time, where it's like, oh, we're not your grandfather's, whatever you think of us brand. But so the first episode I thought was really strong. The second one I thought was all right. And then the third one I am now intrigued again, because I want to see, what is actually going to happen with little baby Yoda. And In the I Have Spoken guy was just fantastic. I really liked him a lot. He brought some comic relief and he was also an interesting character, but not like Jar Jar comic relief, like legitimately like I found myself laughing every time he said "I have spoken." And I really liked that. They're not trying as hard, I guess, and maybe it's because it's like a TV series rather than a movie. Like they have more breathing room, but that's like the overall vibe that I got from it, and I don't know. So far, I really like it.
What an interesting opinion, Zach. You care to comment?
Am I the only person that likes the second episode the best? Am I like seriously? I read stuff online. Everyone's like, that second episode is not as good as the others.
Really?
Yeah,
it's okay.
That's everybody's opinion is. And I'm like, the first episode is hot garbage. It's like, Josh, I'm not sure if you listened to last week's episode, but I was on the precipice of killing the podcast based on that first episode. I'm like, these two heard it. They knew. Like, I was like, no. I'm like, I was angry watching that for the most part. I'm like, this is why I hate Star Wars.
Why?
Yeah, there's an entire. I would get into it, but there's an entire
episode.
Okay.
Go down that road
I'll have
again.
to go back and listen to that. All right.
But yes, like the first episode's just fan service. It's Force Awakens. It's like fan service. Like, you like Star Wars? Bam, whack you across the head with it. And it's like, thank you, sir.
What's
Can I
wrong with
have
that?
some more?
No, the second one came out and it put like a warm blanket around Zach and was like, it's going to be okay. It's going to slow down a little bit. One thing, I don't know if we even mentioned last time, we've got to notice that this show, it's really unique for Star Wars in that we don't get anyone else's perspective except Mandalorian. It never cuts to Space Carl Weathers doing anything, without him. It's never Space Herzog talking to Space Grizzly Man, whatever he would be, but it's just completely focused on our guy, and you get attached to him really quick, especially in that second episode.
Russ, did you just say Space Grizzly Man?
Yes, he did.
I think I'd put something about Wampa Man. That's what that medal is for. He directed Space Wampa Man.
We're having Werner Herzog deep cuts on the Knights of Vader podcast. Russ, I am so proud to have you here. So proud. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off in your train of thought, but yes, go ahead.
No, I probably would have said something about dragging a tugboat over a mountain, so you can go on.
Oh my God, Russ, stop it.
I was gonna say, like, I was a little disappointed whenever the Mandalorian grew a conscience towards Baby Yoda, because I felt like that was like super predictable. Like, now it's like he's a bounty hunter. He doesn't have feelings. He's just into collecting bounty. Like, why is he predictably growing feelings now and saving this thing,
Well, okay, this is the first scene of episode 3 I want to talk about, is that we get some flashbacks. We've seen them over the course of the 3 episodes so far, but this one we get it where baby Mando's parents put him like in a cellar somewhere, shut the door, something happens, and then a super battle droid opens the cellar door, and we hear a loud noise, and he wakes up from his flashback. So this is the $1 billion question. Who's going to save baby Mando from the super battle droid? What Clone Wars era character, because we know it takes place during the Clone Wars, is going to save him?
I'm almost want to say what it's not. I hope it's not a Jedi.
Does it take
it would
place
diminish
during the Clone Wars?
Yes, because it's a super battle droid, and
so.
considering on the age.
I was sorry, with me playing Fallen Order, I had that timeline in my head for some reason, and I'm like, oh, this is and I'm like, oh, no, wait, my bad. Sorry. Continue.
Well, okay, I was talking to John Justice, friend of the show, host of My Nerd World, buy his latest book, Embark 2, Treasure in Darkness on Amazon.
Or get it on Audible. I'm listening to it right now.
There you go.
For a reason.
But I was talking to him, and he's like, oh, it's going to be Yoda. And that would be the tie-in into why he feels allegiance to this thing. And that would tie into Josh's
about that too, but I think that would take two things away, because one, he seems a little bit surprised and not understanding the Force in episode 2, and he would immediately be like, "Hey, you're the son of that guy. Save me." It's like I think that's the last one we're gonna see is
yeah, because you
can't be.
Yeah, you see him like have a change of heart like mid like delivery almost, or like it's not like an instant recognition of holy shit. It's the Yoda looking, but a baby version.
And it
Can
could
I
be
say
contained.
something?
It could be a character we haven't met yet that's just contained in this show, and they're gonna just hopefully give us the answer soon.
Can I say something? I want to put some pieces together and see what you guys think. First thing, I'm just going to throw this out there. This has nothing to do with the rest of it, but did anyone notice the weird red cloaks they were wearing are very similar to the ones in the holiday special?
Yeah, they got their Life Day robes up.
No!
I thought, hold on. I played Star Wars Galaxies, and humans cannot equip Life Day robes. You have to give it to a Wookiee. It's not. That's no way.
Right,
okay, so I noticed that similarity there. Just wanted to point it out.
Zach, was that a Star Wars Episode 3? No.
Why am I making all the special references?
Right, I'm gonna defer my no to Russ's no. Russ, will you do it for me?
I don't have it, but do it. I don't know.
No, I know. I want the Adam Driver no.
No. All right.
What's the other line he has from the trailer? What's it? Because nobody knows who I am, but I do.
I do. Adam Driver, can you please stay? Wait.
It's your boy. I'm out. Deuces.
All right, he's got to go.
Okay, so
Russ is like the resident DJ of the podcast. I like that.
He's the master of the soundboard.
Yeah.
So you'll know it's coming. Oh, it's like, just real quick, Zenger. You'll know a Russ soundboard clip is coming because the conversation will be trending in a very specific direction, and Zenger will start cackling, and then you'll hear the soundboard kind of like chime in, and then Zenger just dies for the next 30 seconds.
This is all true. So aside from the Life Day stuff, all right, what has the Mandalorian said every time he's gone to the Beskar to get the Beskar armor done?
Foundling.
Exactly, which I'm assuming that is putting aside for the children and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if that's why he's becoming it's because he had he was abandoned because of the whole war. This child has no one, and he wants to sort of not have it go down the same path he went down.
Yeah, I think they're paralleling that in when he's closing the little egg he's in is almost like him being closed in that little thing. And I think he's putting that all together.
So you're saying that the identity of the Mandalorian is hologram Michael Jackson.
What?
All right, because he cares about the children. He's just there for the children.
Okay. On a very weird side note for Cinemoddities this week, I just want to point this out. Okay. I feel like going to Michael Jackson's to Neverland would be the ultimate terror for Cinemoddities.
And what are you talking about, the Dark Crystal episode or the one before that?
Dark Crystal, because Rob's fear of course, dolls and stuff, which I can almost guarantee there are tons of them around there. And your fear of what was it again?
Commitment?
Heyo!
There was some movie or something you mentioned, and I'm like, dear God, if they go near Michael Jackson's.
The Dark Crystal, in the weird puppets.
Yeah.
Henson nonsense.
Yeah, it was so going to Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch would be the ultimate worst case scenario for Cinemoddities.
Oh,
that's what it was. Yes, because he has the. There we go.
Zenger, nobody listens to Cinemoddities. Why do you have to bring that up on here when people act? Now people are going to be putting pictures of in the Facebook group to try to get back at me for some weird. See, now, folks, everybody who's mad at me for all the dumb opinions I've made for almost 3 years, you'd be like, aha, we found his Achilles heel, ass. And it just give you a bombardment of pictures now.
Oh, perfect.
I'm gonna bleep that out every single time we say it, so it's still gonna be in here. But everyone's gonna be like, "What was it? What was it?"
But you're gonna leave in the puppet stuff, right?
Yeah, no, that's fine. They can screw Rob over. They can, folks, go after Rob. Mention him in a bunch of puppet stuff. Just post imagery from the puppets. That's fine. Cinemoddities. Check out the last episode of Fansgiving. We watched The Dark Crystal, and then I lost my mind. I had to put on Death Kiss, the Charles Bronson Death Wish knockoff film, which is actually pretty good. But no,
I forgot you guys were talking about Dark Crystal halfway during that episode. And then when you got back to it, I'm like, wait, why?
Yeah, Rob and I did not like The Dark Crystal. Thank you, Fans Choice. Anyway, though, but back to the Mandalorian. Nobody really answered my question. All I got was Russ saying no, that probably won't be Yoda. So what character do we think is going to, what Clone Wars character are we going to see? Because Cowboy Hat Man said in an interview, somebody was asking him questions, and they're like, oh, are we going to see other characters from other mediums in The Mandalorian? And he's like, well, you're definitely on the right track when it comes to questions like that. So who's recognizable to the filthy casuals?
Rex.
Josh, do you know who Captain Rex is?
No.
All right, come on. Just keep asking him character questions, and he'll tell you whether he knows who they are or not.
Would they really get Obi-Wan in this?
Josh, would you recognize
him.
Obi-Wan? Would you recognize Anakin?
I'm feeling more comfortable already.
What
Because
about
I
Ahsoka?
recognize it. I like familiar things.
What about Ahsoka?
No.
I have a feeling they need to build that a little. Seeing her live action for the first time is going to be a little bit jarring. That needs to be in some kind of trailer or something, because I think there's going to be some weird disconnect seeing her as a CG character exclusively this whole time. And then someone's like, hey, it's me, Squid Boy, whatever she called Anakin, or whatever they called her, Snips.
Yeah, there you go.
It can only be Anakin if when Anakin opens up the cellar, he says, yippee, as he rescues Mando.
What if it's Boba Fett, the little guy?
Oh my god! Can you imagine the meltdown the internet would have? It's like Daniel Logan like doing that. It's like de-aged Daniel Logan. Oh yes, okay, I want that. All right, I want the internet to have a meltdown. Prequel iconography. All in.
He's still got a little blue outfit on, and he has Slave One during the Clone Wars and stuff, because I've seen that on those Clone Wars cartoons. I think my kids have that Slave One that came with. They called him. I was like, "This is Baby Boba," and so they called him at the time. They had the little action figure of the little guy.
Yep.
I don't think it's going to be a Jedi though.
It has to be a Force-related character because it could tie into the fact that it's something from his past, a Force user. It's got to be something like this. It's got to be some character that, again, it's Clone Wars era. Who else could it be? You have to narrow it down to like half a dozen people.
Well, look, narrowing it down just off the trailers, it's Bill Burr.
The next episode is directed by Bryce Dallas Howard.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
That might shed
So it's
some light.
a solo character.
It will just be Ron Howard.
He's coming to rescue baby Mando, just like Han Solo.
I was hoping it was Clint Howard, and he was going to make him wrangle his like robot fighters. Does
it bother anybody that Bill Burr is always making fun of nerd culture and how he doesn't really care about Star Wars that much, and he's going to be in this?
Maybe he gets shot.
That kind of makes him perfect for it. He's better than people that are in nerd culture that talk a bunch of crap about it. You know, like Brian Posehn was in that first episode, but I don't see any way they can get Patton Oswalt. Well, what am I saying? Simon Pegg is freaking Uncle Pluck, so I take it back.
I knew that was Brian Posehn. I was like, what? I was like debating, but I was like, I bet that's him.
Oh, it was him. Yeah. I'm a Mr. Show era guy too. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that'd be cool if that. Oh my God, it is him.
He was great. I mean, I thought he was.
He did great.
I think it really good.
Okay, if it's not a Force user or someone like Obi-Wan or Anakin, do they go down the road of like a bounty hunter? Like, do we get Cad Bane? Do we get Bosk? Is it Zuckuss? Is it Forlom? Like, is it going to be like one of those where like the 50-year-old fans like have a romance explosion in their pants because it's like, oh my God, instead of it being like Forlom, it's Five-Lom. Instead of it being like Zuckuss, it's Yuckus.
Wait. It can't be 5 love of money. It's 4 love of money. It can only be one. Nothing else would make sense. What about Greedo? Throw Greedo in there. They got enough Greedos already.
Oh, no.
It's going to be a bad CGI Jabba. Come on. We know it.
Well, that's another. Speaking of you brought up CGI was another thing I was going to say about this show as a whole. I don't know if, to my filthy casual eyes, they're either using very minimal CGI. I mean, obviously for the backgrounds and everything, but for the characters, like I'm seeing a lot of like real costuming and all that.
Yeah.
Does anyone have like, intel on that?
This episode,
I can't really think of a heavily CGI'd character in this show,
which I love.
Other than Droid. I mean, IG the droid, of course, but that puppet baby Yoda is just it looks great. It looks great on film. It makes that episode 1 puppet that they got rid of just look like complete trash. Like, even though he's really little, it's so convincing.
Yeah, it's like they finally get it. People like real things that exist, on in front of the camera more than they do a bunch of technical that you can do in post.
The baby Yoda is the only thing I've really... I mean, the Mudhorn, of course, but the baby Yoda is the only thing I've really seen them do any, like, CGI with, but it's minimal. It's very minimal. Like, when he's in the ship and he's, like, reaching up and stuff, that's, of course, CGI. I mean, I'm assuming it's CGI there. And they've used it in other moments, but normally it's a practical, like, it's a puppet or a doll that he's having to use and work with.
Does that matter to, like, for Zenger and Zack, and does that matter to you guys one way or another that they're using more costumes rather than less CGI?
I love it.
Kid, I love it. Yeah, I love that they can. I mean, besides the creatures, it pretty much just focuses on really, really practical stuff. I mean, you can tell. I mean, what beyond the blurg, and the things they do look great. Those blurgs in the first couple episodes, or the second episode, it looked great. Like the Mudhorn looked really good too.
That blurg in the first episode when he's trying to like shoo them away, that looked rough. That looked like, oh, he's interacting with a computer object. Yeah, the blurgs didn't look too cool to me.
Well, it wasn't as.
I think we're being
in the Star Wars perspective, it's not like that big cow that Anakin tried to ride on in Episode 2 that looked so bad. That is the worst thing ever. So that's where my the space cow looks more convincing in the context of that scene than not Boba Fett trying to ride a not space cow.
I hear Zach's nostalgia screaming at me right now.
No, I think but okay. I'm going to answer both your questions at once, Josh. I think it comes down to it's a matter of blending. I don't think CGI is any better or worse than practical effects. It's a matter of just how good it looks. Like we talked about for Cinemoddities, we were talking about the Dark Crystal, and I know they have the new one on Netflix, and it's like, oh look, it's all like real effects, practical effects nonsense. And I'm like, yeah, but it's still a boring ass story about puppets that are like ungodly looking, and they sit there just like mumble at each other. I'm like, I don't care how good the puppets look. I don't care about anything that's going on because it's horrendous to look at. The same here goes on with Mandalorian. It's like, oh, they create a real like Salacious Crumb character, and they have him on like a little like rotisserie. Yeah, that's neat and all though, but it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't blend with everything else. And it does in that instance. I'm not criticizing the effects there. Again, I think one of my biggest complaints is let me rephrase this. When it comes to Star Wars, we kind of get so hung up in the minutia of like the special effects versus like practical effects, and a lot of that is Lucas. Lucas kind of made the technology the main priority of the prequels. And I think that's never been the issue because I've never looked at Star Wars as a spectacle-laden property. That's what it tries to go for sometimes. I've just never seen it that way. And I think that's why I think it's so weird that the same people that love The Mandalorian for being so great, for having real sets, practical effects, are the same people that love the final battle, Avengers Endgame, despite the fact that it looks like it's like a hard drive that just exploded. Like, I don't get how the same people that just eat up the real effects stuff says, yeah, I love it when Purple Man with the chin scars punches Brie Larson in the face because it looks real. It's like, folks, there was no real effects. Like, yes, they took one like long video shot of all the actors on set to make it look good for promo reasons. But 99% of that sequence in that film is not real. I don't care how much lies they tell you. It's not real. And yet people eat that up. And I don't get why. It's like I said, for the record, I like Mandalorian episode 3. Again, it's not as good as episode 2. And considering that the person who directed this episode is the one that's going to be directing all of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, I hope you like this episode a lot because this person's going to have their hands on the steering wheel for that whole entire series. So great. I think there are some great moments in this, but to get to Josh's point once again, when it comes to effects, I love certain sequences. Again, the fact that our final battle sequence of episode 3 is just them like fighting in like a courtyard of a bunch of like ruined buildings. That's neat. But having a bunch of not Boba Fett's, an army of not Boba Fett's come out of nowhere, and I'm like, this is fake. I'm like, yeah, the armor's real. Like when they're in the little like corridor earlier in the episode and they're arguing over like the Empire and whether we should work for them or not because we hide in the shadows. That looked great. Seeing a bunch of like Boba Fett's like in the shadows, just like lurking around. That's a fantastic visual. I love it. But seeing an army of Boba Fett's fight, it's not anything new. I saw it in Clone Wars and on a larger scale, and it looks the same. It's cartoon imagery, whether it be animation as in the 2008 series or it's going on here. They did not actually put people in Boba Fett costumes with pyrotechnics on wire work. They didn't do that. That was all done in the computer. And I don't get this weird sort of just fanaticism over something just because we can't discern the difference between how it was done.
Well, for me, my whole thing about it breaks down, and this isn't just with Star Wars. I had this same complaint when the first Spider-Man movies came out in the early 2000s. It's like, for me, anything as like a movie watcher, anything that takes me out of the movie or takes me out of that breaks the sequence of experience for me is what I don't like. Whether that's crappy costuming, like real costuming, practical effects, or crappy CGI. And in the 2000s, everyone just went buck wild with that awful CGI because to them at that time it looked great because like our only goalpost for what was good computer generated graphics was the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. And so you watch Spider-Man and it's like, wow, this looks great compared to what we know was available at the time. But even then I was like, ugh. It's like you go from a real guy in a real Spider-Man costume, and then you jump off a building. All of a sudden, you become this bright, jiggly sprite, that's web slinging. It just takes me out of it, and that's what the Star Wars prequels did too. There was all that. The CGI was so poorly. It was in such an infancy stage at that point that it took me out of the experience, and that's my big thing. And when watching this movie, Mandalorian, or not this movie, this series or whatever. I was never taken out of the story because of the visuals. It was, maybe something else, like it was a little slowly paced in episode 2 or something like that. And I got, kind of got a little bored here and there, but it was never the visuals. And that's my main point.
Sure. For the record, folks, if I go off on my diatribes, it's never directed at any particular person on here. It's just me.
I feel attacked.
Spouting my crazy.
No, it's normally directed at me. I wholeheartedly passed the baton to you this time.
I can't get mad at him, Zenger. I wouldn't be here because if it weren't for Josh. So he gets a pass. He's the only person that's allowed to curse on the podcast.
So wait a second. Are you saying that nostalgia's blinded you to anything he says?
No, it's reverence.
It's all gospel?
Reverence.
It's respect. Speaking of which, we didn't go around the table for yay or nay on this episode because this is a tiebreaker for somebody in this room.
Who on earth could that be, Zenger? Who on earth could that be?
I don't know. Let's find out. Big old yay for me. A lot of Mandalorian this Mandalorian episode, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Russ, what about you?
We don't know.
No,
Okay.
I liked it a lot. I liked it a lot. I'm totally on board so far. I've been liking one better than the next as it's going along. I'm really into it.
And that's the way you should watch this show. And now for Zack.
I already told you. It's better than the first episode. Anything's better than the first episode. It's not as good as the second, but considering that there's some fantastic visual storytelling in this episode, especially when we have Mandalorian sitting in his cockpit and he's looking at the little knobby that comes off the lever, and with very little music and without using his face, the director, Deborah Chow, was able to communicate the emotions he's feeling to the audience. That was spectacular. I love that. That's phenomenal. Like, that's the sort of moments that I'm so glad that she's in charge of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. But then toward the end, when we have our spectacle battle of the army of not Boba Fett's, in a lot of those action sequences, it's really kind of, they're done with a lot of close-ups. And close-ups aren't ideal when it comes to action sequences. So maybe by the time we get to the Obi-Wan series, they will have hired a better someone who's better at planning those sort of shots, a cinematographer that knows how to do fighting or shoot fighting sequences a little bit better. I hope for that. But no, this episode was good. I enjoyed it. I don't think it's the greatest thing ever. I think it's, like you guys were saying, it's a piece it's a chapter in the story of the series, and I'm taking it just as that. Again, I think you guys have walked me down from the ledge I was about to jump off of in the first episode. But yeah, I'm holding out hope. I just hope they considering that we have Bryce Dallas Howard, and I don't know what her directorial credits are off the top of my head.
I'll find out.
I hope she does a great job. I hope she knocks it out of the park. Clearly, she has not been around very long when it comes to these things, so she probably doesn't have a lot of bad habits. So fingers crossed. But yes, Josh.
What is her directing history? Has she directed anything?
When Zenger's looking it up real quick, Josh, so far out of these 3 episodes, how would you rank them? Which one resonated the most with you?
I would say honestly,
you can say the first one. The first one is great. For me,
it would be first, third, second. And I'm a filthy casual, so I mean,
See, folks, he's discounting his opinion because he knows he's wrong. Everybody knows the second episode's the best episode because it doesn't punch you in the face with nostalgia.
Remember, it's like episode 2 is the best.
They, with like a cigarette, they put like there was this rumor, I don't know if it's true or not. They say with cigarettes, they put the additives in the first few hits of the cigarette, so you get that buzz and that impact the first time you inhale it, and so it makes you want to keep inhaling the rest of the cigarette that doesn't have as much of that chemical in it. And I mean, I feel like that's just like marketing 101. Like the first hit's the best one, and it makes you want to stick around.
All right, Josh, I 100% agree with you. The first episode of The Mandalorian is smoking cigarettes. It is. I 100% agree. It's as good as smoking a cigarette. There we go.
He's saying it's so good. He's chasing the dragon every episode. He's
That's right. That's right.
Another thing. I'm gonna get that thing.
That's a decent analogy too, because you don't know where the dragon's going. Much like this, you don't.
I like how we're comparing The Mandalorian to drugs. You people just keep giving me more and more fire. You're kind of like my Kathleen Kennedy right now. You're giving me so much ammunition to fire right back at you.
Zach, I'm so good at analogies. I could have used a candle. They put the best smelling scent in the top of the candle. I mean, I can keep going, baby. Anything you want me to.
You're gonna say something like, "This is the bath salts of the Star Wars universe." This is the Mandalorian.
All right, Zanger, did you figure out about Bryce Dallas Howard?
Yeah, there are a ton of her directing credits and writing credits are from a ton of short films I've never heard of, dating all the way back to 2006.
Yeah, she's primarily an actress. I mean, she's in what, Jurassic World, right? And Jurassic World meets more Jurassic. I'm not sure if they made that sequel yet, but
Jurassic World 2, Dinosaur Boogaloo.
Weekend at Bernie's Jurassic Edition.
She was also in a Spider-Man movie.
Yes, she played Gwen Stacy.
Which one?
Another series I can play.
Amazing Part 2, right?
No, that's a different redhead, Russ. Come on, you can't get them mistaken. Isn't that weird that both Emma Stone and Bryce Dallas Howard both played Gwen Stacy despite they were both redheads?
Yeah, weird.
And both really forgettable.
Wait, no, Emma Stone's not a natural redhead. She is blonde. Okay, I take that back. I'm so used to this regular Emma Stone. All right, I lied, folks. All right, so what do we think about Mandalorian and the fact that the other Mandalorian character that's not our titular character, chews out the Mandalorian over his armor or his Beskar steel, and that's Jon Favreau?
Yeah, I believe that's Jon Favreau too.
I believe that's Jon Favreau.
Definitely,
it's his voice. It's his voice. And it's the same voice that he did for Pre Vizsla in the cartoon.
And then the character's name like Post Vizsla or something. Yeah, I know the name is really close.
I get it. It's supposed to be family.
Oh, if it's Post Vizsla, that's too on the nose.
It's something like that. I'm joking about the post part, but I'm pretty sure Vizsla is the last name.
I know that it is some vague connection, but no, I liked it. It showed because to this point he's the only him and the Smelter are the only two people we've really had any interaction with, and the other ones just kind of look. So when he came back with the ice cream maker, which I think that was brought up in the previous episode.
It was.
Yeah, and then when that got put on the table, I just was watching. I'm like, of course it is. So
Russ brought that up last week. He's like,
I heard him. They said the name of the container, which was the name of that ice cream thing, and it just stuck out to me. And I was like, well, I didn't say it's going to be in there, but I was like, I just thought that was a cool reference. I didn't think they would actually show it.
That made me mad.
It's so prominently. Yeah, so prominently, he's walking around with Wilbur Hood's ice cream maker. You're like,
That,
whoa.
but that's okay. I'm glad we brought.
But
this
no
up.
one, because no one knows that. That is that deep cut
But
that just.
But Zach needs to get angry about it.
Because
No, he's not
it's
angry.
ruining. Yes, I am, because it ruined Star Wars. Wilbur Hood and his stupid ice cream machine is one of those fantastic moments in Star Wars where it's like, oh, something happened and nobody was watching. You get this fantastically goofy moment. Like if the holiday special is the Chernobyl equivalent, like Wilbur Hood and his ice cream maker machine is like the 3 Mile Island. It's like, is it going to destroy the world? No, but it's one of those things that's so unique to the Star Wars and Empire, and yet, well, we gotta ruin it because now it's in universe. It's the official best car steel carrier. You can they'll sell. No, I'm not finished. And now you too can buy it at Disney's Galaxy's Edge to store your own personal items for the low price of $49.95. And it's like, no, let certain things be sacred in Star Wars. Not everything has to be a callback. Like, if you want to have callbacks, you have a goddamn army of not Boba Fett's. Let that be the callback. You have Carbonite. You have all this other stupid Star Wars callbacks you don't need. And yet we have to pull from stuff just because, we know. And that's the sort of thing that, again, it's like, that's the sort of stuff that makes me itchy and makes me want to go back on the ledge of the highest building I can find. That's the sort of stuff that drives me nuts about Star Wars. Is that is it bad enough that we have Force Awakens stuff where we just regurgitate the narrative and the themes of the first film? Yeah, that's bad. But it's robbing the small little moments of what makes them special. Because now people are going to see that in Mandalorian Episode 3, and when they see Empire, they'll be like, oh, so he must have had some best car steel with him. It's not just goofy moment.
I don't think those same people are going to catch that. That took so long to
I
catch
it.
that.
I catch it.
Because you know it now. Because you've seen 100 people at Celebration running around doing, it's a big thing now.
I know, because it's one of those things that, when you're reading a Star Wars trivia book on page 467 and 900, I would imagine that in some. I remember a few months ago, I bought Rob a trivia book because eventually one day we're gonna have a Knights of Vader trivia contest, and so I bought it and sent it to him because I didn't want to touch it because I didn't want any sort of I don't want to have any knowledge of the book and what it has. But I would imagine probably one of the questions in that book is going to be, what was the real life purpose of Wilbur Hood's device in Empire Strikes Back? That's what I mean, though. It was just this goofy thing that somebody just handed this actor to carry around that looked kind of futuristic, and now it has a purpose. It's like, no, you've robbed that really eccentric moment in Empire of its bizarreness just to make something canon.
But it gives that something from it retroactively makes that scene make sense. On that note, hey Josh, real quick, what are we talking about?
I was in the mood.
I know you had to go, but we are talking about the object that the Beskar was stored in. Can you tell me where that comes from in Star Wars?
No, Zenger, I cannot.
So you cannot even tell me the movie it's came from.
Okay, Zenger, if a tree falls in the woods,
if
a tree falls in the woods and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? It doesn't.
Does it anger Zack?
Yes, it does. Because they shouldn't be certain things. It's not even sacred. It's that not everything needs to be. It's kind of like having, just because you have access to something doesn't mean you have to develop on it. And that's what makes me mad. Why not create something new? Give him, I don't know, the Star Wars equivalent of a new lunchbox. Have something like that. Make it something new. Make it yours. That's the problem. It's again, it goes back to the adage of let the past die. Kill it if you have to. It's not everything has to pull from the past. Let this thing. It's bad enough that we have not Boba Fett as our protagonist. Let it breathe in every instance that we have. Everything is just again, it's remember this, remember that, remember these things. Oh, you don't remember those. Again, it's memberberry syndrome. It's please let this thing, again, I said it last week. Every moment you pull from the past, you're robbing the future of its identity. And that's my biggest concern, not just with The Mandalorian, but everything Star Wars, is that we're going to rob the future of what makes it so unique for the past. Because think about it. Okay, I know everybody still doesn't like Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. But if you're making Episode 1 in 1999, why not forego Darth Maul? Forgo having this really cool new-looking villain with a brand new lightsaber. whatever. Just make it Darth Vader. It's a suit. Why can't it be somebody else in the suit? People can wear suits. Make the person that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon have to fight at the end of The Phantom Menace be Darth Vader. Maybe Anakin eventually inherits the costume. Who knows? That's what makes me mad about what the current Disney's doing of Star Wars, is that when they feel, it's the Marvel thing. It's like anytime we feel threatened, we go back to like resting on our laurels. Marvel's laurels are everything has to be a joke. Everything has to be a quip. This Star Wars equivalent is nostalgia. We're going to go back to the iconography and solely the iconography. And that's what I'm surprised that I'm surprised Mandalorian, instead of flying around the Razor's Crest, doesn't just fly in a different color scheme of Slave One. Because why wouldn't it be that every Mandalorian flies in Slave One? Because that's what Mandalorians do. They fly in the same vehicle. It says Slave 1, it's Slave 12. And that's why I wonder, like, if you're going to make everything steeped in nostalgia, then just make everything in nostalgia. Because when you pick and choose, it becomes more jarring. If everything's nostalgia, then I don't know which way's up anymore. But when you pick and choose, you disorient me. Because it's like, well, what are you trying to get at?
Zach, have you ever considered that the fact that you know so much more about Star Wars than the average person, that they would have to make a movie with completely new assets for it to be a surprise to you in any way, shape, or form?
I think we had this discussion where I was saying, you know, there's that fine line between just nostalgia and callbacks and just setting it in the actual world. It's like, you know, you can't say, oh, look at that door. That's the same door in Tatooine. Well, it's like, that's just sometimes the aesthetic itself is enough. And you're right. You are right to push back on things like the Wilro Hood container, but the casuals don't care about that. I think it's just such a minor part of everything. It is a minor part. Because I think the bigger story, they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I agree. Like when it comes to the broad brushstrokes, I agree. But the problem, though, is that you do have those small moments in there. Again, it's like the rant I went on last week about all the stupid holiday special things. Like, I want to punch the blue-headed guy in the face for being like, I guess I'm not going to make it home for Life Day. It's like, no. Folks, I had the stupid Life Day shirt made. I wore that the other day while I was giving out turkeys to the homeless. And guess what? I had to explain the T-shirt to every single person, being like, you see that guy in the corner? That's Bruce Valanche. He's insane, but he made one of the greatest pieces of pop culture out there, because there'll never be another thing like this. That's
the guy
what
from Hollywood Squares.
Exactly.
That's the only way I remember that guy from was Hollywood Squares, because he looked like a human Muppet.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that you see in your youth and you're like, why is this guy on everything? And you grow up and go, oh, because he was like a writer for like every show, so he's very, you know, in touch with the comedy community in the 80s, 90s. And I think The Simpsons reference him a lot as well, which kind of...
Yeah, they do. He comes up, I think, he comes up a good bit in the early seasons, I feel.
Back when it was still funny.
Yes. On that note, I just want to point out to the listeners once again, I know you're probably checking your podcast feed. No, this is not the Festivus episode, despite Zach's best efforts.
Folks, Festivus is going to be great this year. Like, it's not even going to be for the typical reasons, because... Okay, again, my complaint with Star Wars, and I know a lot, I know more and more people listen to this podcast every week, so clearly something's resonating with someone. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it's, again, you come for the Star Wars, stay for the Rus and Zenger, and just tolerate the Zack part of it. But there is a part of just the same people who, again, Josh, the reason why you're on this is that you posted in the Knights of Vader Facebook group. You had I'm not sure if he was a friend or an acquaintance or just somebody.
Yeah, he's a friend. And
all right,
lover.
Friend. Okay, then. And he posted something like, Mandalorian is so much better than the rise of, like, cash grab walker. And I'm like, and it's like, do you not realize that, like, okay, going back to my favorite punching bag.
Potentially a bigger cash grab in the grand scheme of things.
Yes, exactly.
Think about it.
Yes, Baby Yoda's the greatest cash grab in the history of Star Wars, folks. Like, I don't care how much you hate Porgs or how much you hate Ewoks. Baby Yoda's the crescendo of all this. Like I said, Lucas, when he saw that, threw his shoe at the TV when he finally realized what Disney stumbled upon. But no, like what this person was saying was that, like, oh, Mandalorian's so much better because it's not a cash grab than Rise of Skywalker. And it's like, folks, the same goddamn company. It's like, it's the same people. Like, everybody's giving The Mandalorian so much credit because, yeah, Favreau and Filoni are in charge. It's like, folks, their boss is Kathleen Kennedy. Her name, if you're going to attack her for how awful The Last Jedi is, then she's just as responsible as to how great The Mandalorian is. You cannot pick and choose whose failures are which and whose successes are theirs. And that's what again, I guess that's the part of this podcast or with Star Wars I get the most frustrated with. It's like all the content in a vacuum, I have no problem with. Am I not thrilled with The Force Awakens? No, I'm not thrilled with it though. But in a vacuum, it's fine. It's serviceable. Like Force Ghost Jim always says, I'd rather have something than nothing. But at the same time, though, thank you, Russ. But at the same time, though, is that we don't live in a vacuum. We live in this culture where everybody lives and dies with what Twitter has to say. And I was reading a statistic the other day that something like only 10% of the population, again, I don't know the world, but the U.S. population uses Twitter. So why the hell do we care what Twitter has to say? Why do we care what any social media has to say? Like I've always said, the Last Jedi made $1.3 billion. Movies don't make $1.3 billion if they're unanimously hated. And like I think we were just talking in the Facebook group recently about the subscriber numbers for The Mandalorian. We're never going to know the exact numbers for that because Disney doesn't have to really disclose that sort of information to us. And anything they ever do disclose will probably be inflated. And that's the thing, that we're never going to know the impact and the sheer success of The Mandalorian because the streaming service model allows much of that stuff to be hidden behind closed doors, whereas box office totals don't allow them to do that sort of thing. And that's why we'll never know. It's like, I don't think The Mandalorian is anywhere near as ubiquitous as we all like to think it is. Like, yeah, Baby Yoda is cute, though, but there's going to be more people that will see The Rise of Skywalker December 20th that will have seen all of The Mandalorian in the last 3 weeks combined. Like, that's just the way the numbers go, folks. It's like everybody's so enamored with Disney Plus. Yeah, that's great. But I think Netflix released something that on the first week of Disney Plus's release, they saw no decline or decrease in the amount of viewership. I don't think people are as tribalistic as we're led to believe when it comes to entertainment.
I see a lot of people getting in that would be just Star Wars casuals who brought to me that have gotten it because they got that Verizon plan where you get Disney Plus for like a year and they're like, oh, I guess I have it. I'll just put it on. Hey, I saw that Star Wars thing, and they start talking to me about it. So they've definitely put a big reach out for it.
Yeah,
Zack,
I agree.
So I'm
Zack,
gonna point. Oh, go ahead.
This is important. As my Padawan, I've watched your journey from beginning podcaster to now, as you've started to get some podcast success, and I'm starting to see a lot of anger in you that is forming, and it's troubling to me, Zack. I feel like the power of the listeners are getting too much for you to handle, and I just want to voice my concern.
The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner, but now I am the master.
No,
I cut
I'm
Josh
on the
in
high
half and
ground.
I cut Josh in half and he disappears.
No,
I'm not. Again, I'm not. I guess the problem is, like, I'm not mad. Most of the times, I'm not. Okay, it's not mad. That's not the right word. I'm not frustrated with the content. I'm frustrated with the idiots are saying. That's what frustrates me because remember, Lucas did not care what anybody thought about any of this. Like my favorite example, George Lucas didn't know the difference between Gunga and Gungan. Dooku Doku. This was a man that just did not like. It was just like, this is my thing. I'm going to do whatever I want with it. Like
Sidious, Sidious, whatever. It's the same thing.
Exactly. And yet we have Disney, and Disney is so concerned about disenfranchising anybody that one person like mistypes something or does something. And it's like, oh my God, the world comes to a screeching halt. We got to fix this. And again, that's the biggest concern because, and I keep saying with The Mandalorian, is that like after The Rise of Skywalker, there's no more movies in the sense of not again, Benioff and Wise are gone. Rian Johnson's floating out in the ether somewhere, and that's it. The only thing we have on the plate are yes, he's floating around like a Mary Poppins, space Mary Poppins. But the thing is,
I actually saw him the other. I saw them, Benioff and Wise, and Rian Johnson. They were like,
"What the hell else we gonna do? Wander around the world the rest of our life, not knowing who the hell we are?"
All right, yes, you are, because you're not doing Star Wars.
See, I told you, Josh. This is what happens. Is that there's this really weird calm, and then the soundboard comes in. Zenger dies for the next 10 seconds.
Very nice.
You okay, Zenger? You need a cigarette break real quick or something?
Just smoke the tip, as Josh suggested.
Just a tip, then throw out the cigarette and pick up another one.
Zenger's getting all quiet because he's just like,
Taking one last look, sir.
all right, shut up, 3PO. We're not even finishing that.
No, but that's my thing though. So I'm more concerned with what public opinion is than I am about the content. Because again, the idiots.
That's what I was thinking of. Sorry, I was like, I had a moment, then Zach went on like a diatribe. Then I was like, I'm going to completely lose my train of thought on this, and it came back to me. So,
all right, Zenger, what is your train of thought that I rudely interrupted you on?
Did you? Yeah, sure. So I had to get my just to put the situation out there for you guys. So I had to get my toe cut up today because I had an ingrown toenail.
Hey,
But
my host
here's
has an ingrown toenail too.
There you go. So here's the funny thing. I have been going to the same doctor for years now, and never came up in conversation. And
Hi,
I'm trying to
Dr.
remember
Nick.
how.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, exactly. But I don't know how it came up. But we started talking about Star Wars for a minute, and I asked him. I said, I was like, have you seen The Mandalorian? That's what it was. He was, he asked me if I was buying anything on Black Friday. I said I was going to get a Amazon Fire, but apparently my mom has one that she doesn't use. So since I pointed out it was for the kids' room, she was immediately like, I'll give it to you. So I'm saying some other stuff. And he's like, yeah, I probably need to pick up one of those so I can watch The Mandalorian. And me and him talked about that for a minute. He enjoys it. He has not seen episode 2, but he liked the first 2 episodes. And then he said that he's like, oh yeah, I really like Star Wars. It's been something I've liked since I was a kid. Like, I was so excited when I saw the new movies and I got to see the Falcon for the first time because I knew the second she said that thing's a hunk of junk, it's never going to fly. He goes, I knew exactly what ship she was talking about. So then when the camera went over, I cheered like in the thing. And I'm like, I'm sure you were in the same theater as Zack, so I'm sure you made his day. But I was like, so what do you think of the new movies and everything? Like, I was trying to get out of him, like, what he thought of it. And he said the best thing they ever did was take it away from Lucas. And I was like, so you like to think that?
I hate that train of thought, too. Because it's like, well, we wouldn't be talking about any of this. So that's just, that might be a discussion for another day. The whole, the sale itself over time.
Isn't this weird how he likes the new stuff? Likes the old stuff, but apparently it's just the prequels. From what I gathered,
it's a point for everybody. It left a bad taste for a lot of people, and you know.
But that's the weird thing, though, is that like this is what drives me nuts about people. Is that like, and this is why I keep talking about, and I feel like sometimes I'm screaming into the void about this. Is that it's the power of narratives. Like the narrative after, like when The Force Awakens was coming out, was like, oh, the very first line of The Force Awakens is this will make things right. If that's not no wonder why Lucas doesn't like that movie. It's a giant FU to him. It literally begins with that, and nobody talks about that. Everybody's so busy praising JJ for how great he is. The film literally starts off with, this will begin to make things right. And nobody in the fandom has a problem with that. Nobody. And it's like, if
a lot of people like it. A lot of people really like that. And I kind of like it all, so I'm kind of like, oh, come on, did you have to? But, you know, I don't get that. That is definitely. I mean, it's money. It's also money. They got this, and they were like, everyone hates these prequels, and I appreciate that we're getting just a little taste of that. That they're kind of blending the world and making it one. We're seeing some of the things, you know, finally seeing that actual super battle droid in action. And it's terrifying. It looked great. I'm glad that, you know, they realize that Star Wars is one thing. Maybe Favreau can like kind of slap some sense in all this. JJ just comes from a different perspective, man.
I don't think it's again, but like you have to look at this in the Hollywood sense, though. Is that JJ is not an auteur? He's not. Favreau's not an auteur. Favreau made the Dead Behind the Eyes Lion King movie. He's not an auteur. I don't care what people think. That first people have to realize that first Iron Man movie, they didn't have a script. They were making it up as they go along. It was a happy accident. And then when they put some effort into the second one, Favreau was convinced that was going to ruin his career. That's how bad everybody thought Iron Man 2 was going to be. And guess what? The brand carried it forward. But that's the thing, though, is that like Favreau and Abrams are not auteurs. They do what the studio tells them to do. The studio says, put this here, put that there, and they go, yes. And they put it in the corresponding places. They do not have any sort of imagination. They're not that type of filmmaker. They're Brett Ratner's without the bad touch. And again, that's fine. No one's saying they have to be auteurs. Not everybody in Hollywood has to be a genius. But the problem is that it goes back to narratives. Is that I remember why it was like this, like January of 2016, I was bringing my dog at the time to the vet, and the receptionist was like talking about Star Wars. And again, Star Wars, so my ears perk up, very similar to Zenger's instance with his doctor. And it's like, oh, Star Wars. And she's like, oh, The Force Awakens was great. So much better than those trash prequels. And it's like, that's not somebody's opinion. That is a narrative they've consumed. Because if you think the prequels are trash, tell me why they're trash. Give me a reason. Why is The Mandalorian great? Give me a reason. And guess what? Like I do on this podcast, I'm going to push back. I'm going to make you defend your opinion. And chances are most of these people the argument devolves into, it's bad. And at that point, it's like, you don't have an opinion then. Because if you have an opinion, you can defend your thought with other arguments. And I think that's the problem, is that so much of what Star Wars is nowadays, it's narratives. And that's why for the last 2 years, I've been pulling my hair out when it came to The Last Jedi. And it's with Disney. You got to push back against these narratives. And unless you push back against them, Star Wars is never going to be its own thing. And that's what it comes to. Like, again, not to bring this back to The Last Jedi, but The Last Jedi, again, it's weird. I've been lately been looking at I know we don't really talk about it on the podcast. I know a lot of fan content does this, but I've always been wondering for years now, like, who's going to be the people who defend The Last Jedi going forward? And I think originally back a couple years ago, right after it came out, I said, like, oh, maybe the Star Wars podcasting cabals, the cartels, maybe they'd be the ones who defend it. And they did at first, but to this day, they still defend it, but they're not very proactive about it. Yet the only
I'd say that the main, most popular one definitely has one host who has no problem leaning into it and putting his jabs in there. And he seemed pretty happy with it after it came out, as far as I can remember, too. So I agree with you there. It's not getting its defense. Hey, I'll be there. I'll be at the gates of hell with you with that. All right, Zach?
But the point I'm trying to get at here, and maybe I'm kind of changing the topic from The Mandalorian to maybe The Rise of Skywalker in the process, is that like the only group of fans, because we do have, again, I always talk about it on Star Wars, the Nutma Star Wars side of the fan base, but it's weird, the only part of the fan base that's the opposite of them is trying to defend the creativity and the uniqueness in Star Wars is the Reylo part of the fan base. Like, as weird as it may sound, and I know we don't really cover it on here a lot, but the Reylo fans might be the only salvation for Star Wars as fans, because they're the ones who at least are recognizing what was so unique about The Last Jedi, even though it's one very specific part that they're the loudest about. But they're, as weird as it may sound, it's like, help me, Reylos, you're my only hope. They're the only
we're right there with you, man. Oh, I mean, they're right there.
But even like somebody brought up a point in the Last Jedi that I had never thought about compared to The Force Awakens. In The Force Awakens, Kylo Ren tries to grab the Luke Skywalker saber out of the snow after he knocks it out of Finn's hands, and he's calling the lightsaber to him, and it flies right past him and it goes to Rey's hands. It's a cool moment, not going to deny that. But then somebody brought up the point in The Last Jedi when they're in the throne room and Snoke is telling Kylo Ren, you're going to strike down your true enemy in front of you. And while that's all going on, he's able to manipulate the lightsaber at that moment. And they brought up the good point, and this is, again, in the context, guys, of Reylo, is that Kylo Ren is only able to the Force only allows him to manipulate the the Skywalker saber is when it's in the protection of, when it's in the interest of Rey. And I never thought of that. And I never thought of it before in that way. That and think about it, in the moment that Kylo Ren kills Snoke and pulls the lightsaber toward him, guess who grabs it? Not him, but Rey. And think about it. In that 20-second sequence, we have more going on multiple layers in Star Wars than in 3 episodes of The Mandalorian combined. And yet
fantastic. That whole setup is fantastic.
And again, that sequence goes on for 30 seconds tops. And yet the same fan base that's so concerned about the minutiae of Star Wars, practical effects, throws that entire Last Jedi moment out, all 30 seconds of it, because Army of Boba Fett shooting practical effects. Yeah, this is Star Wars. And I lose my mind at that moment. I'm like, this is, again, Star Wars is not just people in cool costumes shooting each other. Like, if that's what you think Star Wars is, go watch Avengers Endgame. Lock yourself in the room and just keep watching that, because, and that's what goes, again, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to go off on another rant.
That's okay.
I'll get off the soapbox. Okay, walk me back from the. Okay, Russ, because
I'll walk you back a little bit till you start
Josh,
talking about. I want to talk about that big chunky Mandalorian, man. Think of all the cosplayers, just the guys who love dressing up. Think about how many opportunities have opened up with finally a plus size Star Wars character that isn't the Rancor Keeper and isn't Malakili. All right, wait. Look, I want to challenge. I want someone to show me some pictures of some Ghostbusters cosplayers that aren't the same size as that Mandalorian. Cosplayers, look, they're a certain breed, and that Jon Favreau guy, they were dunking their wings, pumping their fists when they saw that. Like, that is definitely, I could see why people had a great time with that whole moment.
But I'm not trying to take that away from people. What I'm trying to talk about is the philosophical layer of it all. That's the issue. Is that I'm not taking away that it's a cool moment. There's a bunch of cool moments in Star Wars that have no deep philosophical meaning. I look at Rogue One, Darth Vader. There's no deep philosophical meaning to Vader slaughtering a bunch of rebel troopers, but it's a great moment. It's the idea, like, yeah, you can have great moments, but spectacle, again, Captain America picking up Thor's hammer. It's a fun, cool moment, though, but it adds nothing to Captain America as a character in the course of 8 years in the MCU. It's just there so idiots will cheer. That's the issue. Because even going back to the episode 3, when Mandalorian, like, he's cornered in the, whatever you want to call it, Werner Herzog's office, and he gets surrounded by 4 stormtroopers, and it's like, freeze, we have you surrounded. And it's like, there's no tension here because we already established that he likes having overwhelming odds. So no tension whatsoever in this sequence. And then he kneels down and shoots the little, like, saber darts out of, whatever they call them. What do they call, whistling willows or something?
Whistling birds. Actually
Whistling
said birds.
Okay. He shoots them out of his gauntlet, and they all go flying around, kill all of them. And I'm not making this up, folks. In my head, I could legit hear the audience applause in my head. And I'm like, I would imagine all across homes across the world, people applauded at that moment, despite the fact that nothing unique happened there and everything going on was telegraphed from a mile away.
Freeze! Don't move! Hands up! Drop the blaster!
Wait. What I'm holding is very valuable. Here.
Now turn and face me! Stand up!
And it's like, again, Star Wars.
Those were Chekhov's birds, man. It's Chekhov's bird. We had to see it happen. No, I'm kidding. Of course.
That's fine. Again, I'm not trying to rob any of this of its uniqueness. And to be fair, folks, I am really dialing up the devil's advocate part of this discussion. But it's the idea that, like, somebody needs to at least make people look at the Mandalorian other than just the fan servicey, superficial, cool sequences. Like, again, if we're going to attack The Last Jedi for everything, then if we're going to scrutinize it at that level, we should scrutinize all Star Wars at that level. If that's the rules we're playing by, we got to be consistent. And that's what I'm trying to do here is that, again, it's like my message with anything with Star Wars, and I'll shut up and let everybody else talk for once, is that it's just because you don't like something doesn't make it bad, and just because you like something doesn't mean it's good. And that's what I'm trying to get at here. That's kind of my message. Like, if you love The Mandalorian, please do not let me take it away from you. I don't. If you love something, love it to the umpteenth degree. Never let anybody take it away from you. But at the same time, though, love it because you love it, not because you're swallowing a narrative that you read on the internet somewhere. Off of soapbox. Everybody had pee break now for the last 20 minutes. Everybody comes back to the conversations like, hey, like, what I miss?
No, you're fine. I understand, and you're right. If they're gonna dish it out to legit good stuff, you're right. You should put the same scrutiny on stuff that people are just taking in whole cloth like that. I will. It's something you have to say with every Star Wars, and of course we all know that it is in a way geared to kids as well. As like, maybe this will be the hook. I don't think the new trilogy is doing that great a job with the hook of just bringing in that new generation as much as they want to. But I feel like this was a good step towards doing that. Like, I have kids in the house, and they can't wait. They got home this Friday, and the first thing he said was, Is it Mando time? Is Mando out? I'm like, yes, Mando's out. And they on their own have been watching it, which is something I just bow my head and I say, this is the way. Great job. All right, good. That I will say, for first-hand account, kids do enjoy the show.
Like I am. I'm genuinely glad to hear that. And I don't want to take anything away from this show. Like anything else is said. I think Russ, you mentioned it last week. You're like, if one kid like checks out the holiday special based on Life Day, the Life Day comment, I'm like, yeah, that's great. But it's the idea that there will be people who will sit there, Google that on YouTube, and just sit there. And then guess what? Every time it comes up in conversation, we'll talk about how awful it is. And which is fine. Like I think it's fair to say that the overwhelmingly majority opinion on that is that it's awful. But it's the idea that you just, again, okay, no, I'm good. All right.
It's just a rite of passage. And if they're getting that far into it, then they for certain care.
Yeah,
right?
I do. I hope this is like a, much like we've used a couple of times now, it's the tip of the cigarette. It's like, I hope this sits there, gets people like Jones and for more. They watch some Mandalorian and they're like, oh, okay, let me check out some other Star Wars stuff. But there's a reason why, like when Empire comes out, and again, everybody forgets that when Empire came out, like that was not everybody's favorite film. Like it wasn't. It was not everybody's favorite film. It took years for it to kind of gestate. And then everybody again forgets as well that Jedi made more money than Empire. Like, that's the weird thing. Like, Empire, for the longest time, was the lowest-grossing Star Wars film. And it's only until people really took a step back and started to analyze it properly that it started to be held in such high regard. And that's the thing, is that, like, 20 years from now, are we going to be talking about a bunch of not Boba Fett's shooting random people in a courtyard? No, we won't, because guess a year from now we'll be talking about in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series when Obi-Wan slaughters a bunch of people. And that's the thing. The spectacle. What we were joking about, Obi-Wan likes cutting. He has a fetish for cutting people's limbs off. It's like, that's what I mean. Though the spectacle only goes so far. Like, yeah, a bunch of like your kids, Russ, they love Mandalorian. They love the action sequences, and that's fine. That's really neat. But action sequences don't have staying power, because, like we mentioned, Josh said earlier, a lot of this stuff looks great in the moment, like with Spider-Man, but it has no staying power beyond that. Like, how many people now will say that Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies are infinitely better than the Sam Raimi ones, because all this, I mean, the spectacle only lasts so long. But then at the same time, people do realize that Spider-Man 2 is the best one, not because of its spectacle, but because of the layers to it. And that's kind of my concern with Mandalorian, is that it's doing a better job than like Force Awakens did at having those layers. But at the same time, though, it's like, is it doing enough to have staying power? Because we're getting a second season of this. So clearly Mandalorian is going to be one of those characters that's going to live forever in Star Wars, which I have no problem with. Again, every character lives forever depending on what timeline you're looking at in the universe. But I don't know. That's just kind of my concern, though, is that it needs a little bit more weight to it. But I don't think you have to sacrifice fun for weight.
It's true, but also think about it. This is like Act 1 of this. I mean, yeah, you go on a sec. This is. I feel like judging Star Wars in Act 1, but like, yeah, it's a lot of fun. You know, I'm talking about the actual movie itself. But we haven't seen the middle and end yet, so we don't really know, and it's hard to say when you're sitting there trying to talk about a show. It kind of sounds dumb, but I like where it's going so far, and I'm just glad it's hooked a lot of people.
When I say these things, I'm not saying them to the show. I'm responding to the fan reaction. I guess I should just, again, disclaimer, qualifier, is that's what I'm doing. I'm not, when I say these things, like, yes, when I complain about the best car steel container, yes, that's a complaint toward the show. But like, my focus is more on the reaction to it, and then what Disney's going to infer from it. That's my concern, but less the content of the show. Because the show, again, I'm going to watch the show. When it comes out on Blu-ray, I'm going to buy it then, so I have a physical copy that they can't take away from me. But that's the thing, though. Is like, I'm more concerned about the future of Star Wars than I am the present of Star Wars. Because this is a show that the reception to this, what people are saying about this show, is going to dictate how they proceed forward.
I think their focus is going to be on smaller projects like this, because I mean, this is something they have more control over. Like, it's something that they can definitely, I think, do a lot quicker for a lot cheaper an amount too.
Sure.
I think the budget for this is just like maybe a third of what a film is. Is that right?
Nah, it's around 120 million. So it's less than the movies. The movies are around 200 million to 250. So it's about half.
Okay, but here's the other thing. They're making them kind of go back to basics with having to do practical effects, having to make it to where it's because you know what will probably age better? That show over a lot of the the Marvel movies. This show will probably be something that like you could show to somebody and they would probably wonder, when was this made?
I'd say the one-to-one of this would be the
now.
Daredevil show, right? Isn't Daredevil of all the Marvel shows kind of considered the pinnacle? And there actually are a little bit of parallels with this episode when he kind of goes all or Daredevil or Batman and takes down that whole Werner complex and gets our baby Yoda back. But I've watched Daredevil and I've enjoyed Mandalorian so far much more than Daredevil. Daredevil definitely dragged on way more than this does. And I enjoy both of them, but I enjoy Mandalorian way more.
They made a mistake with those shows of doing them like their seasons ran too long because the story just had way too much time to gestate with those shows. But that's a story and conversation.
That's one of the things you have to think about when especially the first episode came out and it was like 38 minutes, and then the second one was out and it was like less than a half hour, and people are like, well, what's going on? This I'm used to Netflix shows which are 40 minutes or an hour long. It's like, well, it would drag out too much, I think. In that
that's instance. The thing. That's
much like a Daredevil or a Punisher did.
That's the thing. That second episode told the story it needed to in the time it needed. Like, the first episode ended where it needed to. The third episode, like, if you had split that up any different way, I think it was perfect the way they did it. So
no, it is. Same with the third. Yeah, I liked how it wrapped up in the third one, and it leaves you going, oh, that was all right. Oh, wait, what's going to happen now? He's not mentioned anywhere where he's going to go. You have no plan. Just
I've heard a brief synopsis on what's happening next.
All right, well,
next episode.
I'm going to say, well, no spoilers. I don't know where you stand.
I don't want to hear it.
I've stayed in the dark on that, so I'll stay there.
I guess I should say, for the record, folks, like as time goes on, next couple of weeks, because now we are 3 weeks away from the Rise of Skywalker, give or take.
Wow.
And I'm going to be going more and more underground in the sense, like I'm going to be checking social media a lot less often. So if you do try to I know there's been a couple people joining the Knights of Vader Facebook group. We're getting more traffic than usual. If you don't I'm the one that checks people in. I know Zenger and Porg Knight are moderators, and they get to it sometimes. But if I don't comment, because usually I'm always around the Facebook group. But considering that we're getting more and more TV spots, like I've already on Twitter, I've already blocked or muted every word I can think of related to Star Wars. So it's time. The closer and closer we get, especially once that premiere happens. Like once the premiere happens, like the entire plot is out there. Like there's no hiding it anymore. It's out there. But again, once that happens, I'm going to be gone. But again, it's up to Rus and Zenger to do whatever they want. I think Josh is always kind of cautiously hanging out in the back of the Knights of Vader Facebook group trying to gauge the situation.
Good. I felt like I've done the same. Yeah, I have stood by my block of all the whatever spoilers, speculation subreddits for a good month or so now, and I'm happy I did. I've forgotten all of those whatever spoilers, which hopefully sounded all fake at the time anyway. But let's not dwell on it.
No, but interesting to say. It's gonna be fascinating to see how close or not this film aligns to what was hinted at many moons ago.
No, I did break down and watch that little TV spot because it just won't stop playing it on either Facebook or Twitter or anywhere. I finally actually watched it, and I kind of wish I didn't. Not because it's one of those, I wanted to save that moment. Because all right, it just really, I didn't enjoy the dialogue very much.
Was that the one with the Sith troopers and the Knights of Ren finally in it?
Yes, and it was the one where they pop the jet troopers off the back of that bike, and they're like, they fly now. Yes, they fly.
See, we don't have any of that stuff in Mandalorian, which I am thankful for.
Thank God. Okay. You're right, Zenger. Give credit where credit is due. Yeah. There's 100% less quippiness in the Mandalorian than there is in everything else.
I feel there's still humor. It's just, I guess, better written humor.
It's subtle.
Like trying to set a Jawa on fire is a humor point. That's great. That's great humor. He doesn't want to. He can't speak Jawa. Set him on fire. That's probably my favorite humorous moment so far.
We also liked the stormtrooper on fire this episode.
Yes, No, the I've spoken. God, he actually has a name and I can never remember it.
Nick Nolte, Ugnaught, Zenger. Come on.
Yeah, Nolte.
Okay. Nolte has a few good, like just his literal meaning of stuff and the way just he's like correcting and just. I just enjoy the way that I like that kind of humor. It's not like, oh, jokey joke. It's just like this, the way the person's speaking and everything. That's kind of the humor in it. The stormtrooper getting snippy with Mando as they're walking in. That I thought was kind of funny. The him telling him, hey, be careful with him, and he's like, you be careful. It's like a stormtrooper talking back is like the most adorable thing in the world. But it's one of those things where if that was a movie, they would have when he found that guy when he was going through wrecking the place, there would have been some like standoff between the two of them.
Yep.
And they didn't do that. It's not that kind of show, and I'm glad of that. Like that's the thing. I love Star Wars, but the quippiness sometimes, as much as I love the MCU and all that stuff, it would not work in this show at all. And if they did it, I think people would be more upset than they are with it.
I don't know. That's the Marvel thing, though. Like, audience has been conditioned that if a character is not making a funny quip every 13 seconds, it's bad. Because that's what every single Marvel movie is. Like, every Marvel movie has to, again, dramatic sequence and quip. Dramatic moment and quip. And it's like, oh, please stop. Please stop. This hurts. This is painful. Like, not every single moment needs to be undercut by a joke. And I'm glad. That's why I like this.
Well, he has the whole, I need to get me one of those for the jetpack. But that's,
it was. That's you're right. That's the closest line to him making a quip. And it's still, he's like, yeah, I got to get one of those. And yeah, it's like, yeah, that's a very Rocketeer-ish almost. I don't know. I kind of rolled my eyes a little, but I was like, nah, all right, I got you, Mando. That you didn't take it too far. It was right in that pocket. It was good.
I also appreciate the taking the droid taxi hostage part too.
I did like that.
Just
I
points
did like
a
that
gun at it.
Drive. Yeah, the whole stagecoach scene, basically.
Yeah, that was neat. That's the sort of stuff that's great in the show. Like the idea of him being cornered by a bunch of like third-rate bounty hunters, but he's overwhelmed, and so he has to sit there like make do, like something like that though. But then it devolves into the spectacle of having an army of Boba Fett's. Like that's like, you know what it should have been? Get rid of the army of Boba Fett. It should have been the Jon Favreau Mandalorian. That was it. Make it one. Make it unique. Make it instead of just the army came to help him because
I think there's more going on. I think there's more going on with that scene than we know of right now. It's something to where I think maybe later there's going to be more revealed about, like, because I mean, think about it. He just caused this entire their entire group to have to basically move.
Yeah, now the Mandalorian's on the outs with the Bounty Hunter Guild and the Empire simultaneously because of him, but because he almost stuck to his guns and they were like, you're taking this is Imperial, took this from us and you're helping them. So I think him proving that, he wasn't some Imperial bootlick and in going back and taking it, and who knows where this I like that they are kind of all in and they're all, I won't play it again. Of course, this is the way and all that. I like the little world building of them because we don't know that about them. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about Mandalorians in the cartoons and everything, but they're not like this. They're not wearing helmets all the time. None of this Mandalore is in that. I had to say it again. Sorry.
Exactly. None of the Mandalore is in, and I like that they're this still weird culture that we are kind of not even like really getting. I mean, did you notice that when they started fighting and the thing, like they basically just treat it as like a whatever thing. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure
fought each other so many times. That's the feeling I got from it. Like these guys are constantly like testing each other and pushing each other to the limits and stuff.
Because did you see what Jon Favreau, Jon
Favreau?
Sorry, I was trying
Favrelorian.
Did you see what Favrelorian tried to do with him at the beginning of the fight?
No,
grabbed him under the helmet and went to go take it off.
Oh, he's trying to unhelmet him. Oh,
yeah, and then the one person is just kind of just ignoring the fight. The only time she gets involved is just to ask him those questions. And I'm wondering if he's like, "Oh, my helmet was removed" or something. If she wouldn't have just been like, "Kill him,"
they're
or
like
you
luchadors.
don't deserve the armor or something. Like
You're
that's
going to
just,
see some luchador Mandalorians because that's a big thing in luchador. You can't take off the mask; it's over.
So I said, and I love the whole when he was talking about the. Sorry, I feel like I have to kind of actually talk about the episode for one, but two, kind of talk about like stuff like I actually really enjoyed in the show of them building a world, and it was subtle stuff like the whole back and forth and with them. The only complaint I have is he never told them what was really going on. So how'd they know to come out and help him? Or is it just kind of like
the track
they figured? Okay, I was assuming there was going to be some MacGuffin that, oh, it's the tracking fob or this or that. Like I said, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed sort of they only come out one at a time thing. I was like, I don't get why that is.
Interesting, yeah. It's
like
if they are the Mandalorian, and whichever one goes up is, that world's Mandalorian at the time.
But then again, if we get a season 2, does that mean we're going to still focus on the one we got, or is it kind of like we're just going to get a different one that's going to be the main one? I mean, who knows?
Before that, you think Grief was like, "Whoa, you put on some weight, Mando. Whatever. I guess you're spending all that Beskar I gave you. Hey, go do the bounty." And they're actually kind of lazy, and they just send different ones out. Oh, you got a more green on this one, Mando. Ooh, you're shining Mando today.
I love that. Space Carl Weathers being like, "You sound a little bit different." I like that. Just every single day is a different one. And it's like, "You sound a little bit different. You have a cold this week?" And it's just a woman's voice all of a sudden out of nowhere.
Where'd you get that helicopter turret from, Mando? Whatever. Here's your puck.
But no, I mean, I'm really excited to see where this goes, and I like the aspect of the other Mandalorians in the sense of, well, what's their deals? I'm sure, I'm hoping there's going to be a little bit more delved into that and what's going on with them and what their whole situation is.
They did, kind of, blow that whole, the big scene of a big Mando attack, which, maybe a lot of people were waiting a long time for to see. I definitely enjoyed seeing it. I get the feeling that maybe that I don't think they're going to hit that button again. He hasn't really been hitting the same buttons besides flashbacks again. So maybe by the end they're set up somewhere else, and that was kind of the savior of that particular episode. But he's going to have to go into hiding on his own or formulate some kind of plan for our baby Yoda.
Well, I have a question though about Mandalore. I'm doing the pun like everybody else does. Is that
it's so much fun.
Sure, it's only going to confuse the audience between the planet and the joke we're making, but
the planet, the people, or the joke we're making,
all the above. The thing though is, like you guys were saying earlier about the smelter person who's in charge. It's like, taking the helmet off, like a Mandalorian never takes off their helmet. When has that ever been established in Mandalorian culture? Because in the Clone Wars, when we're on Mandalore,
yes.
None of them had
you have played into my trap.
Because that's all they do on that show is take off their helmets. In Rebels, all they do is take off their helmets.
Right.
So since when is
Django,
that a thing?
Django walks around in his pajamas.
But that's what I mean, though. It's like, since
Zack,
when
you have played into my trap.
Okay. You playing the trap card?
I'm playing the trap card of who's to say that they aren't that, because in the history of Mandalore, we're still kind of up in the air on a lot of stuff. Like, sure. Star Wars Clone Wars has shown some stuff, Rebels has shown some others, but don't forget, like, Mandalore was supposed to be a peaceful place at one point. Like, they had all these wars and stuff, and they kind of stopped doing that, and kind of. So, what if this sect of Mandalorians wasn't? Okay. It was like ones that are like, we're gonna uphold, the true values of Mandalore, and we're gonna, we respect what you do, but we're gonna go do this. So that could be the thing of why they don't.
Yeah, you're kind of talking about a warrior race that was, taken out of by so many different factions. I mean, we know from canon that Jedi fought them, that I'm sure the clones fought them, the droids have fought them, that maybe now they're just like, we have to go back to our roots, what made us great. We are not these pacifists anymore. Because weren't they portrayed as pacifists in Clone Wars?
Well, yes, because that was remember on one of the Blu-rays, there's a thing of Cowboy Hat Man talking about like one of the Mandalorian arcs. I think one of the earlier ones, and he's like explaining how like in Legends EU, well, back when it was more EU before Legends, he was explaining to George Lucas that Mandalorians were always at war with one another, and then he's like, Lucas wanted to make them pacifists, and I had to, in the interview he starts cringing. He's like George, you can't do that, and it's like, well, I'm George Lucas, I can do whatever I want.
Hold my Jar Jar.
Exactly, hold my baby Jar Jar. You'll make me $1 million in 20 years, but but I think that's the thing though, is. Yes, it did become pacifist for a while. So yes, maybe they're going back to their roots now that they've been kind of the Empire purged them, so to speak.
And they got stepped on by basically everyone.
Maybe.
You see how the pacifist thing worked out? That's why we wear Darth Maul's horns.
Yeah. But the only thing though is that they're kind of, again, going back to the fan response, is that now, like in the last week, I've seen like 36 memes of Mandalorian smelter person saying like a true Mandalorian never takes off their helmet, and then under it like 1 million pictures of Jango in Attack of the Clones being like, see, he's not a Mandalorian, and it's like, no, they had
to adjust and write their proverbial racist ship, I guess, to be able to come back to survive in some way. That seems to be their whole thing, is surviving, and then they mention that in there, that is the way.
And I do want to bring up real quick that I know, like I've seen it on the internet as well, that everyone's like, Jango Fett wasn't a true Mandalorian, Boba Fett isn't either. Like, one person in one line of dialogue in Star Wars The Clone Wars says Jango Fett was not a real Mandalorian. And that person ended up to be a bad guy and was like super duper corrupt. So I have no idea why we're putting that much, faith in that character telling the truth. Like, we don't really know much about Jango Fett's background. I forget in Legends EU if he was a Mandalorian.
I thought in... Oh, wait, the book's down. I was like, I just had my EU, like, encyclopedia around, but I think it's downstairs. I thought at one point he was the sole surviving Mandalorian.
If you just consider the movies canon, the word Mandalorian is never, ever stated. It's just something we've known forever from, like, It's like Sith not being said in the original trilogy. It's just something we knew,
I found out some interesting man lore I want to point out real quick. Am I allowed to?
Like we could stop you, Zenger.
Okay, so you know all the comments about the mythosaur?
Sure.
It's not the thing he rides in the holiday special. The mythosaur is actually that, the Boba Fett symbol, and that symbol that it shows, that thing with the tusk?
Sure. Yeah, like the main signet.
Yeah, that's a mythosaur. Apparently.
And we know that's not the holiday special creature?
The holiday special creature has like this long neck, look like a brontosaurus or a brachiosaurus or one of the long neck dinosaurs.
But it still has a skull though, right?
Yeah, it was something that was chasing Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yes, it looked like something that would chase Bryce Dallas Howard.
All right. I feel that bad enough that... Okay, Josh, do you have any concluding thoughts on the Mandalorian? Considering that you're our residential filthy casual and we've kind of put you in the corner for the last 30 minutes, do you have any final parting words of wisdom for the filthy casuals out there on the Mandalorian? Or Star Wars in general?
The show?
Well, everybody knows that already.
I feel like it's a main reason why people are getting Disney Plus, and so far I'm impressed by it, and I'm kind of bummed out that I don't have Disney Plus. I won't reveal how I was still able to see the episodes, but yes, very tantalating indeed. I think it's good, and I think everyone should watch it, and then everyone should go and listen to my podcast, which has nothing to do with it.
We'll get to the plugs, Josh. We'll get to the plugs. All right. So concludes this episode of the Knights of Vader, a Star Wars podcast. Check out our Facebook group. Type in Knights of Vader in the Facebook, and chances are you'll find it. Find us on Instagram at KOV Podcast. Shoot us an email, kovpodcast@gmail.com. If you like what you hear, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes or whatever podcasting platform you're currently listening to us on. Thank you to An Inspiriority Complex for providing our theme song. Check out the show notes to hear more from them. Also, while you're at it, check out some Knights of Vader t-shirts. We're right around the corner from The Rise of Skywalker. Help support your favorite third-rate Star Wars podcasts and look fashionable all at the same time. We would certainly appreciate you repping our logo and all of our designs. For questions, comments, concerns, or snide remarks, contact me, Zack, on Twitter, at Cinemoddities. You can also hear me on the Cinemoddities podcast talking about what movie, Zenger?
You were talking about The Dark Crystal. And Death Kiss? Death Wish?
Yeah, the Death Wish knockoff. Yes, with not Charles Bronson.
Oy, I got kissed with death.
I like how the Kiwi Boba Fett and Charles Bronson could be the same character.
He's no good to me, dude. Yeah, they are. Very, very close. Wow.
Okay. All right. Okay, when you're not on this podcast ranting about Star Wars, Zenger, where people find you?
I think everyone knows they can find me at this point in this podcast, so I'm going to take my moment to actually tell everyone to go out and get the second book from John Justice and Bark, Treasure in Darkness. I'm currently listening to it on Audible, and I would highly recommend doing the audiobooks because he does a good job of doing little sound effects and changing up his voice for different characters and stuff. And when they're done over radio, it's done with a radio thing. He does a really good job. It's not just somebody reading a book. It's kind of almost an audio play of the book as well. And since it's by him writing the book and also narrating it, he's able to put the correct inflections on everything. So go out, check out Embark, the first book and the second book, Treasure in Darkness.
Okay, now as somebody who listens to the podcast, who happens to be on the podcast right now, I can interact with you in real time and say something that I might be asking myself while only listening to it. What is this book about, Zenger? You haven't really explained what the book is about. I don't know what it even is.
So Embark is basically, not to spoil anything, it's basically a not too distant future. Humanity has kind of spread out to amongst the starting to spread out to amongst the stars, and due to some turn of events and stuff happening, they have no choice but to spread to the stars in the first Embark book. And it's very Star Wars-esque. There's also a few Star Wars references dropped in there because it is mentioned as a key essential part of classic culture and everything too. So it's basically a space adventure in a new world that John Justice has done an amazing job of creating. So I highly recommend it.
Well, with a name like John Justice, how can you go wrong?
Damn straight.
Just rolls off the tongue.
All right, Russ, when you are not being the titular Mandalorian, where can people check you out?
Yeah, you can check out my show, the Unbelievers Podcast. We come out every Wednesday. We got a couple episodes left before we take a little break at the end of the season. But check out this week's episode, Mantis Man, or Alien.
Oh, now you're getting into the territory that we have to talk about on our podcast.
Oh, that's what I live. That's why I can come here and I have to think about it, and I love it.
My brain pretty much goes on autopilot on this podcast, as I'm sure you've been able to tell by the past 30 minutes of radio silence from me.
All right, Josh, when we're not forcing you into the corner of a bunch of nerds just talking nerdy crap and you being the coolest one in the room, when you're not being the Renaissance man and the father of the Knights of Vader podcast, where can people check you out?
You can find me at Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries. We're a podcast that talks about the show Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack and other mysterious things such as, cults and crop circles and things of that nature. And we're on iTunes, Spotify, everywhere. We are literally everywhere. If you look on your phone right now, I'm watching you.
Whoa.
It's very weird. But it's Uncovering Unexplained Mysteries. I have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/dancingwithghosts. I do a bunch of content on there about music-related things. I review video games. I don't know. Zack watches all of it, so if he likes it, then maybe you'll like it too. And then finally, my band is called Dancing with Ghosts, and we're like Depeche Mode meets Nine Inch Nails. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then we're on Spotify and iTunes.
And thank you, Zach, for introducing me to Josh. Josh, we did an episode about the Guardian UFO because I love Unsolved Mysteries. It was the most formative show completely of my life, and I had to do one. So yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, man, Diane Lebenek, she was quite the character.
Oh yeah, that I love that story, and then that one really hooked me as a kid. And I looked at it later and said, "Wow, this is one of the biggest frauds ever. How did they pull this off?"
I loved it when I first saw it, and then you got Bob Exler on there, and he, looking like
he's the guy, man. Oh man,
just 1970s era looking Elton John looking motherfucker. Or sorry, I'm not supposed to curse on here, but I just want to play like a drinking game in his segment. Every time he says the name Guardian, if you took a shot, you would be like wasted by the because he's like, this tape by Guardian is amazing tape, and Guardian, we need to know who Guardian is and what Guardian knows.
Hey, you got to be on my show because when our episode, I did like a 30-second power clip that's him just going, Guardian is there, Guardian. And
I'm glad you noticed it too.
It's there, and I was right on it. So thank you, Zach, for introducing us.
Yeah, man, hit me up on Facebook or something.
Yeah, I'll find you.
See, folks, it's all connected. 'Cause I also want to bring up too for Josh that John Justice is a huge Depeche Mode fan.
Oh, sweet.
See, everybody's connected. See, Josh, look what you created. This entire world is flourished. You're like the George Lucas of Star Wars, third-rate Star Wars podcasts.
Now, if only I could find a way to monetize all of this, and it would all be worth it.
If we just make some toys out of the podcasters we have, it would sell like hotcakes, and we give an over-under on it.
If we could ditch these losers and get that last podcast exclusive deal. Ooh, so cool.
I broke up the amount of money they made off of Patreon, and if you divide it 3 ways, because I think there's like 3 people on the show, each of those mofos are making like at least $9,000 a month.
2 of them don't actually like the podcasting is their job, and the other one's an actor. So, living that dream. Other Lucas, do you have any input on that? Did I put you on the spot too quick?
Well, this is going to be an edit.
Remember Alderaan! Down with the Empire!
I think that means we're ending this.
I like having that button. That's dangerous.